The Companions, legendary warriors, honor-bound brothers and sisters. The greatest thing you could accomplish in life is to fight well on the battlefield, stand strong by your companions, and feast afterwards, reveling in the glory of the Companions, the greatest warriors in all of Skyrim. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Scott from FudgeMuppet. Today, I am bringing you the full story of the Companions, every last bit of information to help give you the full understanding of this intriguing band of warriors. Yes, the Companions' story goes further back in history than any faction we have been able to join, and there is far more to the group than meets the eye. They aren't Transformers, but they are far richer in lore and culture than the mead-swilling warriors of Jorvaska would have you believe. Thanks so much for choosing to watch this video, we really appreciate it, so sit back, grab a drink, listen closely, and get ready for the show. So when dealing with a group whose lore is deep and vast, where do we start? Where is the logical place to begin this tale of heroes? Well, the start, of course. First, we will dive into the founding of the Companions, to understand the context of which they were born. Now, this is the story that goes back, all the way back to the time of the Snow Elves and the migrants from Atmora. So let's head back thousands of years in time. Their origin, in fact, took place in the Merethic era, a time that modern historians of Tamriel can only give a vague approximation of events. The story begins in a land since lost, supposedly now a frozen wasteland, Atmora, birthplace of men. For presumably many centuries, maybe even millennia, humans had been migrating to Tamriel, later becoming the native men to places such as Cyrodiil, High Rock, and Hammerfell. And just to make sure we're on the same page, we aren't talking about Red Guards in Hammerfell, they come from Yakuta thousands of years later. This is referring to the native Nedic populations of the area. Skyrim at this time was ruled by the Snow Elves, the ancient civilized forms of the twisted Falmer that you see today. Now later in the Merethic era, after many other human migrations, came Ysgramor and the Atmorans, which are essentially proto-Nords. They looked like and were physically Nords, perhaps maybe with some minor differences, we'll never know, but it is their genes that would be passed down through the millennia to make the Nordic people we know today. Anyways, Ysgramor brought a whole heap of his Atmoran friends to Skyrim. His fleet lands at Ciroc Head at the northern tip of Skyrim's Broken Cape. He then builds Sarthal nearby, the first ever Atmoran settlement in the area. In fact, if you have played the College of Winterhold questline, you would be very familiar with Sarthal. Now, Ysgramor himself, while also hailed as a great warrior and leader of the 500 Companions, is also considered the very first human historian. Other native humans like the native Nedic populations seemed little more than tribes of cavemen with oral histories, but Ysgramor developed a runic translation of Nordic speech based on Elvish principle. Now that is interesting, especially since it indicates cooperation and peace with the resident Snow Elves, which was in fact the case for a while. Yet problems and tensions did arise, which resulted in the Night of Tears. The cause for this is contested by scholars, but let's break down what happened and the main theories of why it happened. So you remember Sarthal. This was the hustle and bustle of Nordic life. It was practically their only settlement of note. Well, one night, called the Night of Tears, the Snow Elves attacked Sarthal and slaughtered every Nord they could find. Scholars have boiled it down to a few possibilities as to why they turned on the Nords after a relatively good peace between the groups. The first theory, which makes enough sense, is that the Falmer simply wanted to eliminate the humans as they feared their culture would surpass their own and their population would increase until the elves would be pushed out of their homes. The other interesting theory is that the massacre was instigated after the Nords discovered something under the city of Sarthal, something powerful, something the Falmer wanted for themselves. Now presumably this is the Eye of Magnus, which during the College of Winterhold questline is found in Sarthal, so this theory definitely has some credence. Elven scholars claim that Ysgramor spoke provocations and blasphemies causing the attack, whereas human scholars determine that the attack was unprovoked, which would make a lot of sense if the Eye of Magnus theory is correct. Anyway, so after the Night of Tears, the only known survivors were Ysgramor himself and his two sons, Ingol and Ilgar. They fled across the seas back to Atmora, and what happens next is the birth of the Companions. Ysgramor, Ingol, and Ilgar managed to get to Atmora safely, and they are pissed off. They told the story of treachery and murder at the hands of the elves. They inspired the men and women of Atmora to join them in returning to Mereth, the name for Tamriel back in those times, and giving the elves what they deserve, death. He bands together the 500 companions, This is the origin of the companions that you know today. They sail a fleet across the seas back to the lands of Skyrim. However, on the last day, a massive storm called the Storm of Separation occurred. This is where Ingol and his ship was separated and drowned in the Sea of Ghosts. Ysgramor braved dangerous weather conditions to find him, and he eventually did, dead. Ysgramor would later order a city to be built south of Ingol's resting place so that he could gaze at it from his palace. This city would become Windhelm. Fun facts aside, Ysgramor and his companions arrive at Ciroc Head and unleash bloody war on the Snow Elves, driving them from the lands of Skyrim and Solstheim. He rode into battle on a Storm Atronach bear, conjured for him by his personal cleverman, the Nord phrase for mage or wizard, and he wielded Wuthrad, which tasted the blood of many elves. Ysgramor's bloodline would continue as kings of Skyrim until King Borgus died at the hands of the Wild Hunt, which ended the Ysgramor bloodline of kings. So what of the companions? What happened to the companions? Well, when Ysgramor rallied the companions into his army, he did not order and enact ranks as such. The 500 companions were assembled on the premise of free will. They thought that every man should be able to make their own path without the orders of others. The companions followed because they chose to follow, not because they were commanded to do so. This value is practiced by the companions to this very day, but there was another very important value to the companions, and that is honor. The companions could make the choice to be honorable and stand by their brothers and sisters. They could choose to fight by their side, even to their very deaths. This was the ideal of the companions, free and honorable. Now, obviously there was a commander of the army, and this was Ysgramor, the first Harbinger. The companions followed his commands and listened to his advice of their own free will. After the companions had reclaimed Sarthal, the captains of each ship convened in the circle of captains to decide what to do next. What they decided upon was that every captain and his crew go their separate ways, exploring the vast unknown of this unexplored land and slaughtering every elf in the process. The captains traveled all over Skyrim, killing snow elves and establishing new homes. These captains and their crews would be the ancestors of many Nords today. However, these groups eventually changed from the ways of the companions, and generations later, there would be holds with jarls and social classes. Some of the other groups did manage to preserve the ways of the companions for a time, like those of the long-gone Fallowstone Hall in the Rift, but there is only one group of companions that still exists to this day, and that follow the old ways. Out of the 500 companions, one of them was named Jeek of the River. He was the captain of a ship named Jorvaskr. Jeek was a childhood friend of Ysgramor and would become the first Harbinger besides Ysgramor himself. However, the role of the Harbinger had diminished greatly after Ysgramor's death, becoming a more symbolic position. So, as the circle of captains decided to part way and find their own paths, creating their own legends, Jeek of the River discovered the Skyforge in a land that would soon become Whiterun. The local elves feared the Skyforge, and that made it all the more tempting for Jeek. Since the land around it was fertile, Jeek and his followers, unlike what the other groups were doing, decided to settle the land. His group was one of the first who decided to settle an area and dedicate themselves to protecting the people of their new home. He took his boat Jorvaskr and used it to create a grand mead hall. This is the very same Jorvaskr mead hall that the companions live in today. Hundreds of years after the death of Ysgramor, the companions became nothing more than mercenaries, really. Their services could be purchased for fighting wars, which would often lead to Shield Brother fighting Shield Brother, as they still held their individual honor and code of free will. Ryfwyll, the Withdrawn, Harbinger at the time, made the wise decision to usher in a reform that decreed companions could no longer be involved in any war or political conflict. It was this action that kept the companions together, and it gave the companions the reputation as impartial arbiters of honor. This is important to note, as it is crucial in understanding why the companions to this day remain impartial in political affairs. You may have noticed that some of the companions around today are in fact not of Atmoran descent. I mean, some are even elves, so how did that all start? The first Harbinger that was not of Atmoran descent was Ciroc the Lofty. He was once a Redguard servant at the Hall who proved himself when he fought one of the warriors who treated him disrespectfully. Later, he would save the life of Harbinger Tulvar and was granted a place amongst the companions. His speed and cunning surpassed every single companion, even without Atmoran blood, and he eventually had a short run as Harbinger. He established many blade work techniques that are passed on to companions even now. His time as Harbinger helped set the precedent that a companion need not be of Atmoran descent. Then came Hernantia the Outsider. Not a very Nordic name, is it? Well, Henantia was the first elven harbinger. This was a time near the end of the First Era where elves were not permitted to be full companions. He came first as a servant, spending his days humble and committed to his servant duties, and at night he trained fiercely. His long lifespan allowed him to live through many harbingers. He never complained, never rested, always kept his body strong and mind sharp. Over this time, he became trusted by the companions, as it was he who ended up teaching many the ways of honor. One of his pupils who became harbinger had aged into an old man in his deathbed. With Henantia by his side, he assembled all the companions and named Henantia his successor as the new harbinger, saying, "Even an elf can be born with the heart of a Nord sometimes." Some of the companions were furious and threw their weapons to the ground, abandoning what they considered blasphemy. However, there were those who remained, those who knew the truth of honor, and they continued to serve as companions. This was the fundamental turning point for the companions. People would never again be turned away for the blood of their ancestors. From this day forward, all that would matter is a person's heart and their honor. But it's not all rainbows and sunshine from here on out. You see, during the late Second Era, there was a series of false and dishonorable harbingers who laid claim to Jorvaska. A man named Kinril Longnose could not stand by while the name of the companions was being dragged through the mud. He met in the wild with the gathered companions who were true of heart and still believed in the old ways of honor. Together they stormed Jorvaska, killed the usurpers, and returned honor through blood. After this, he began a new tradition based upon Ysgramor's Council of Captains. A group of trusted advisors would be called the Circle, members who would serve as examples to the newer generations of companions, ensuring that the codes of honor can have an unbroken string of tradition. It was thanks to Kinril Longnose and the creation of the Circle that the companions remained stable and honourable for hundreds of years, right up to the present day. So now you understand the origin of the companions, with Ysgramor and his 500, their basic values of free will and individual honour, and how they have changed over time, including the decree of impartiality and political conflict, the precedent of non-Atmoran companions, and the creation of the Circle. But wait, there is much more to talk about yet. We all know the rumours of werewolves, and we haven't even spoken much about the modern companions, so get ready for more. After all, this is the full story of the companions. Wouldn't be very full if I stopped now. Let's start with this werewolf business. As we know, Kinril Longnose began the tradition of the Circle, trusted advisors amongst the companions, including the Harbinger. Now, somewhere along the line there was a Harbinger named Turfig who first turned to the ways of the beast. In Kodlak Whitemane's journal, the current Harbinger's journal, he speaks of a dream where he sees every Harbinger since Ysgramor ascending to Sovngarde until Turfig, who tries to enter Sovngarde but is ripped away by Hircine and taken to the hunting grounds. Turfig seems regretful but also eager to join Hircine after a lifetime of service as a beast. So every Harbinger and members of the Circle after Turfig became a werewolf, including the current Circle and Harbinger. Now the specifics of the agreement that led to this are not known, but what is known is that the gift of lycanthropy was granted to them by Hircine as payment for services to the Glenmoral Coven witches. However, they were deceived into believing that it would not be permanent and they would go to Sovngarde. That is not the case, and upon death, they are taken into Hircine's hunting grounds. Just in case you aren't aware, the Glenmoral Coven of Witches is a group that has close ties to Hircine and have been able to perform feats such as curing vampirism and lycanthropy. They can polymorph into ravens, and some have even become hag ravens. So that is who the Glenmoral Witches are. Anyways, the current Harbinger of the Companions, Kodlak Whitemane, has some reservations about being trapped in the hunting grounds after death. He wishes to go to Sovngarde and feast eternally with honourable warriors and his ancestors, whereas some of the Circle, such as Aella the Huntress and Skjor, revel in their bestial powers and would never think of giving up such a gift. The end of the companion storyline involves you ridding Kodlak of his curse and allowing him to go to Sovngarde. You can even help Farkas and Vilkas rid themselves of lycanthropy as well, so the future of lycanthropy may be at an end for the companions, as Aella is potentially the only one left of the companions who remains a werewolf. That is, if Farkas, Vilkas, and yourself are cured. But there you go, that is how the whole lycanthropy thing went down for the companions. But before we leave this topic entirely, it is important to address the enemy of the Circle, the Silver Hand, werewolf hunters. All we know about the Silver Hand is that they are werewolf hunters with a hatred for lycanthropy and they wield weapons forged from silver. But I found a cool theory on Reddit that states the Silver Hand could be a splinter faction of the Companions who broke away after they discovered Harbinger Turfig's and the Circle's lycanthropy. This is just a theory, but the Silver Hand sometimes shouts lines like, "Ysgramor would be ashamed of you," implying they have some kind of reverence for Ysgramor and are actively angered by the Companions' disgrace of his name, from their point of view. But perhaps this reverence for Ysgramor is because they are a splinter faction of the Companions. Another indication of this theory is how the Silver Hand risk large amounts of men trying to recover the shards of Wuthrad, Ysgramor's axe, from the Companions, which really should not be that high on the priority list of werewolf hunters. They do seem to have a specific hatred for the Companions, and perhaps this is because the Silver Hand is a splinter faction who sees the corruption of the Companions at the hands of Harbinger Turfig, bringing the lycanthropy curse upon them. Anyways, this is a cool little theory that I just had to share with you. So now we're all up to speed on the current state of the Companions, how their culture was formed, where they came from, and why some of them are werewolves. Now let's actually take a look at the current Companions, meet a few of them, see what secrets they may hold or what history they may have. This will give us some nice insight to the famed warriors of Jorrvaskr. So let's actually list off who is who. First, we have Kodlak Whitemane, the Harbinger of the Companions. And remember, a Harbinger is not a leader who rules with an iron fist, but an elder, a counselor, and great warrior whom the others choose to follow. Then we have the members of the Circle, the senior and seasoned warriors. There is Skjor, Aella the Huntress, and the twins, Farkas and Vilkas. Then there are the rest of the Companions, Athas, Rhea, Torvar, Najada Stonearm, and Vigna Greymane. There are also some others who work for the Companions but technically are not themselves, such as Brill, Yorland Greymane, and Tilma the Haggard. There are also some interesting ex-members that we should have a look at later, including Uthgerd the Unbroken, Arnbjorn the Dark Brotherhood Assassin, and Hessler the Volkihar Vampire. But first, let's deal with the Companions themselves. First, we have the oldest of the bunch, Vigna Greymane. He was once a great warrior who joined the Companions in his youth. He has lived long enough to see the rise and fall of about a half dozen Harbingers. He was also a commander in the Imperial Legion for 30 years, but at the end of the Great War and the signing of the White Gold Concordat, he left believing that the Emperor was a coward and the Empire brought shame to all. He is the brother of Yorland Greymane, who is technically not a companion, but he mans the Skyforge and creates weapon and armor for the warriors of Jorrvaskr. Yorland also makes jewelry for his wife Frelia to sell in her stall. So the Greymane clan has a relatively good connection with the Companions Guild. There is also Athas, the Dark Elf who hails from Morrowind, and sought to join the Companions, initially thinking they wouldn't accept him as he was an elf. However, he was pleasantly surprised and was welcomed into their ranks. Athas is an expert bladesman. He even offers training in one-handed. You can often see him debating with other companions about the superiority of a blade. Interestingly enough, he mentions that he likes to avoid Eastmarch, the hold of Windhelm, pointing out that there is something in the air, saying it's too close to the border. It seems that Athas isn't too fond of his homeland, Morrowind. Perhaps he had a rough upbringing as he claimed to have crawled out of the province. Anyways, what's important is that he is your resident Dunmer blade expert. Then we have Najada Stonearm, who it seems Athas actually has a bit of beef with, as when you enter Jorrvaskr for the first time, they can be found brawling, and Skjor remarks, "Are these two at it again?" implying that this is a common occurrence. Perhaps there is a little animosity between the two. Regardless, Najada is an expert with a shield, which is probably where she gets her name, Stonearm, from, as her arm holding a shield could be as steady as stone. She also offers you training for a price. She is generally quite unpleasant, uncaring, and an all-round bit of a bitch, but luckily that doesn't affect her ability to be a competent warrior and shield sister. There is Rhea, the only Imperial amongst the ranks of the Companions. Ever since she was young, she dreamed of becoming a companion, and she is very enthusiastic about her role. Rhea is also a generally really friendly and humble person, but beyond that, there isn't much else to her. The last of the companions who are not a part of the circle is Torvar, the resident drunk with a preference for hammers and axes. He is relatively friendly but falls victim to bouts of jealousy as you progress through the ranks of the companions. He is one of the newer members of the companions and is fairly rash and eager to fight. However, he doesn't take well to intensive training. So those are the companions outside of the circle: Vigna Greymane, Torvar, Rhea, Athas, and Najada Stonearm, the last of which are prone to a good brawl. Now let's move on to the real deal, the circle, the best of the companions. First we have the twins, Vilkas and Farkas. As children, Vilkas and Farkas were rescued from a cult of necromancers by a man named Jurgen. This man, Jurgen, was their adoptive father until he left to fight in the Great War, but never returned and presumably died. Vilkas and Farkas were said to be the youngest members to ever join the Companions. Both twins rose through the ranks and eventually became members of the Circle. The twins' relationship with their adoptive father is different between Vilkas and Farkas. Farkas refers to Jurgen as his father and presents what Vilkas calls a rosy description of their childhood. Vilkas, on the other hand, resents Jurgen for abandoning them. Both Farkas and Vilkas, like Kodlak, resist the call of the beast blood, choosing to refrain from the transformations if possible. Vilkas especially struggles with the side effects, more so than the others. The biggest difference between the two is their personality. Vilkas is said to be a man of keen intelligence and possesses a hot temper, whereas Farkas is kind-hearted, yet a man of simple mind. The other companions often tease him about his dim-wittedness with names like Icebrain or Oaf, but he knows they're just fooling around. He takes the banter from the boys, but if anyone outside the companions makes sport of his intelligence, fists will fly. It is also important to note that Farkas is an expert heavy armor trainer and Vilkas is an expert two-handed trainer. Before we move on here, here's a fun little fact. Vilkas means wolf in Lithuanian. His brother's name, Farkas, also means wolf in Hungarian. The two wolves. There is also Aella the Huntress, the expert archer of Jorvaska. According to Aella, she comes from a long line of female companions. Her mother, her mother's mother, and all the way back to Hiroti Blackblade were companions. Aella lived with her father in the woods, training and hunting until she was old enough for her trial. Unfortunately, her mother did not live long enough to see her join the companions, but she fights to honor her memory and all her ancestors. There are rumors amongst the companions of her affair with Skjor, claiming the two are quite intimate. Dialogue between the two reveals that they go out at night in beast forms to hunt, which is forbidden. Aella denies the relationship when confronted by Najada, but there does seem to be some truth to the rumors. Aella is especially furious at the death of Skjor, but I guess we will never be able to confirm their relationship. But what about Skjor? What's his story? He is considered to be the highest ranking of the Circle, next to Kodlak Whitemane. In conversations with Kodlak, it is shown that Skjor is actually Kodlak's potential successor. Kodlak tells him that he should consider his actions and live long enough to take the mantle of Harbinger. Long before he was a companion, he fought in the Great War against the invading Aldmeri Dominion. He was critically injured, recovered, became a sellsword in Skyrim, and then eventually found the Companions, which he joined. Rhea also mentions that Kodlak and Skjor once fought 101 orc berserkers by themselves, an incredible feat. And as for the last of the companions, we have Kodlak Whitemane, the harbinger of the companions. Kodlak is a man greatly respected by the warriors of Jorvaska and by the people throughout the Nine Holds of Skyrim. Kodlak was recruited by Askar, the previous harbinger, when he was traveling in Hammerfell. He eventually succeeded Askar as harbinger and has been in that role for 20 years. He is a legendary warrior and prudent tactician. However, this has been less of the case in recent years. A year before the events of Skyrim, Kodlak contracted a disease called the Rot, making him weak in body as he slowly deteriorates till death. He desperately tries to find a cure to lycanthropy so that he can join the Honored Dead in Sovngarde rather than being taken to the hunting grounds of Hircine. As I mentioned previously before, he documents his dreams in his journal, but the latter part of the previously mentioned dream is the foreseeing of the Dragonborn, who would come and save him from the grasp of Hircine, which is one of the reasons he lets you join so quickly. So you end up saving Kodlak and he dies happily ever after in Sovngarde. A little fun fact about Kodlak before we move on: he's actually a secret Talos worshipper. So that's all the companions of the modern day, but what about the ex-members, the ones who didn't cut it? We have Hesla, a Nord and Volkihar vampire residing in the Volkihar castle. She says that she was once a member but didn't get very far, though she believes that it isn't relevant anymore because with her vampiric powers she could kill any of them easily. Likely a lot of bravado. There is also Uthgerd the Unbroken, who was technically never a companion, but she had attempted to join. She was set in a fight against a man for a trial, but she accidentally killed him in the fight, and then was barred entry to the guild. And finally, there is Arnbjorn, the Dark Brotherhood assassin. Arnbjorn was once a member of the Circle in the Companions, so he was rather well accomplished. It is also where he got his werewolf powers. However, he was cast out of the faction because his methods were considered unorthodox, underhanded, and dishonorable. But there you are now familiar with every single member of the Companions, from Kodlak to the Circle to the other warriors of the Companions, and also the ex-members that have found their way elsewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the full story of the Companions. You have learnt the Companions' origin with Isgramor and his 500. You have learnt how his values of honor and free will were passed on and preserved. You've also learnt how over time the Companions evolved with great harbingers who stepped in to make the guild a better place. Policies like remaining impartial in political conflict, creation of the Circle, and acceptance of other races. And finally, you learnt all about the current members of the Companions, their backstories, and their personalities. But that is all I have to say about the Companions. That is pretty much everything. I hope you enjoyed this video and have left enlightened about the nature of the fearsome Companions in your Vaska. It has been my pleasure to make this video for you guys. Check out our social media accounts like Twitter and come have a chat with us. Subscribe for more videos just like this, and if you desire more videos in this kind of format, suggest some in the comments below. Thanks again, my name is Scott from FudgeMuppet, and I will be back to nerd out with you again in the next one.